Hello everyone, this is Noodle, and today I am doing a video that many of you have been asking for quite a while. We are comparing the vehicle optics, and those are the infrared optics, the thermal optics, and the zoom optics. We're going to take a look at what they are in real life, what they're best at in Battlefield 4, and where and how they should be used. The first one we have up here is the infrared optics, which more resemble the standard night vision optics in real life, which are basically variants and advancements on starlight scopes, which started being developed during the Cold War, Vietnam era. And what they do is take the low amount of light that is visible even when it's pitch black out, and they magnify it so you can basically see in the dark. And in order to basically make it easier to see in the dark better in real life, people will use red filtered flashlights or red filtered lights and illuminate what's in front of you even better, as if you were using a flashlight at night. But instead of using a flashlight, using night vision optics, and red light is not easily visible by the naked human eye, and therefore you can be sneaky. You can sneak up on your enemy. And to be honest, in Battlefield, they don't have much of an application. None of the maps are night maps at the moment, as of Naval Strike, so on most maps, I feel like they're more of a hindrance than they actually are good. Sure, they work well for close to medium distance spotting out to about 100 meters, but beyond that, I think they hinder your vision more than they actually help. I tried them on darker maps such as Dawnbreaker, pretty much to no avail, because of the lights on the side of the buildings, making them actually worse than if you didn't have them at all. Surprisingly enough though, the one map I found where it was actually pretty good to have these was the second assault map, Firestorm. I by chance stole an anti-air vehicle recently, and I still had these installed on my loadout from when I was testing for this video, testing to try to see if there was a couple maps that were good for these darn things. And I was on Firestorm, and I was very surprised at how well they looked on the map. It must be the coloring of the map. They actually worked pretty well. But overall, until DICE adds true night maps, these things are pretty much useless. I wouldn't recommend them for any map except Firestorm. But even that, there's other optics that are better for Firestorm. Okay, let's move on to our second optic we have here, and it is the zoomed optic. These are pretty simple. Anyone who has ever fired a rifle with a scope on it, or anyone who's ever stared through a pair of binoculars, pretty much knows what zoom lenses do. They make things out in the distance look like they're closer to you, and I will say, these do work pretty darn well in almost any circumstances. In a tank, when you're trying to hit armored targets at 300 plus meters, or when you're trying to use the LMG HMD to pick off soft targets out further, they work really well. On big maps, such as Silk Road, Gulmode Railway, and surprisingly enough, Siege of Shanghai, they work great on. The one thing that these do wrong from real life is when they zoom, it actually makes the aiming reticle, the thing you use to aim your projectile, larger. Which, once again, anyone who's fired a rifle knows that when you zoom a scope on a rifle, the reticle on the lens doesn't get larger. Just whatever is at the end of that scope in the distance just looks like it is closer. Which, just kind of, this happened in Battlefield 3 too. It's a video game, they still work good, regardless of it. And last but not least, my personal favorite, which will not come as a surprise to many of my loyal followers, is the thermal optics. And how these work in real life is pretty darn interesting. Looking through thermal optics is the equivalent to looking at the world through the eyes of a thermometer. Huh? Thermometer, you say? Yes, this is how they work. They look at any given landscape and they assign them different levels of white and black to the objects directly depending on how hot or cold said object is. During the Cold War, when the Soviets started using these things in their spy satellites, they actually were able to draw a sketch of the then classified Oxcart, which is more commonly known as the SR-71 spy plane, when it wasn't even outside on the runway. It was being developed at Area 51, just outside of the giant Nevada test range north of Las Vegas. The Americans knew the passover times of the satellites and would remove the plane from the runway at those times, but the heat signature from the plane that was sitting on that runway X minutes ago was still visible on the ground through the thermal optics on the satellite. And then the Russians actually sketched up a shape of the plane and delivered it to the United States government, which left many people baffled at how they got a sketch of the SR-71, or what was then known as the CIA's Ox card. Left a lot of people baffled until they discovered that they're using thermal optics and thermal imaging to decipher the different temperatures. But enough of my history lessons, back on topic here. In real life, there are two settings on thermal optics, white hot and black hot, for you to cycle between on different night, day, or whatever you like better, which kind of would be a cool addition to Battlefield. I think would help these things a little bit. White hot is what is used in Battlefield 4, meaning everything that is warmer than the ambient air temperature will appear more white as the temperature gets hotter. So if something's 1,000 degrees, it's going to appear really white, or if something's ambient temperature, it's going to be black, just like it is in Battlefield. Personally, I think these are more realistic in Battlefield 4, but they were either totally nerfed on purpose, or DICE just screw them up from Battlefield 3. In Battlefield 3, I would get in a tank, click the thermals on, and never switch back to the normal optics, because they just worked great and they looked great. But in Battlefield 4, they get kind of uncomfortable to look through at times, so I find myself switching back and forth a lot, especially on maps with a lot of man-made lights, or if anyone's ever used these on Goldmine Railway, you'll know that the ground must be really hot there, because it's just a whiteout. It's really hard to look through these sometimes. Even on city maps like Dawnbreaker, it's almost useless to use these because they look terrible because of all the man-made lights around. With all that aside though, I still prefer these for the simple fact that when you have the thermal optics, there is nowhere to hide. Sure, you can run from my tank and hide in that bush, but you're warmer than that bush, so I'm going to see you and shoot you in the face. Campers up on faraway mountains are easily distinguishable through these and are easily picked off. Maps with a lot of foliage is where these things truly shine. Battlefield 4 soldiers can blend in quite well with the trees and bushes and sneak up on you, but when you have these things on, those suckers might as well be wearing a strobe light on their head saying, "Here I am," because you can't run from them. You see the white hot image next to the black bush, and it's like, there they are, shoot them. Another place where these shine is during Levolution events, such as the sandstorm on Gulf of Oman. When everyone else is trying to move slower and not die due to the reduced visibility of the sandstorm, and trying to spot the enemy because it's hard to see, you're just chugging along at top speed, picking the noobs off one by one. There are a countless number of times where I've been looking through my standard optics only to do a quick peek through the thermals to see a couple guys that are completely unviewable before because they're either camouflaged well or just had like their head sticking out, and I was able to just quickly pick them off because they thought I couldn't see them and didn't even know it was me shooting at them. And that is why I will continue to use these things over everything else, even if DICE puts night maps in, because these still will outperform night vision optics. And although it does take more skill to hit the enemy at longer ranges, with these over zoomed optic, the ability to see those guys like I just mentioned that you weren't able to see before still outweighs the advantages of the zoomed optics. If you guys have any questions about why I use these that I didn't mention in this video, or where you should use these, how you should use these, please feel free to leave a question below and leave me what you use. Do you use zoomed optics? Do you use the night vision? Do you use the thermal optics? And why do you use them? I'm interested to hear that too. But until next time guys, my name is Noodle, and always remember, use your noodle.